guys to work together with their partners and peers, and maybe for a while we ought to start pointing that out, that we are doing so. So I really appreciate the comments on that. Are there any other comments on the consent agenda? I did have one on the last item, and it's only a reference point for the administration. I was wondering if the rate, and this is on the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development office space in Hibbing, is that rate a negotiated rate, or is there some statute that puts us in that particular number? And you don't have to answer today, you can just send back to me.
But Mr. Chair, that was negotiated.
Okay, thank you very much. Important issue for me on those kinds of things. Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. We're down to the regular agenda. Environment, Natural Resources. Chair Forsman, you are first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple items. The first item is a denial of an amendment request to Ordinance 46. You do have in your packet, we have a map, and we have a number of issues, but I believe I would like to have Barb, since you were so good to describe it to me, I wonder if you would come forward and if we would have Director Hayden, Head of Planning and Zoning, address the issue on from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended denial of this after a hearing on it, and I would move it. Support. Is there support? It has been moved and supported, and I would look to Director Hayden. Barb, could you please kind of frame it as you did for me, so I understood it well?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is a matter that was before the St. Louis County Planning Commission. It was an amendment request submitted by the town of Ness after they had spoke with an individual property owner looking at some rezoning. The town we've had staff working with the town, but obviously there were some areas of varying concerns and support within the town, and so the town drew the boundaries for the zoning quite uniquely. And so when we discussed with the, and it actually goes around individual property owners, which isn't a proper way to do rezoning. So we've talked with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has asked that our staff really sit down with Ness and go through a more logical and a compliant process that would stand up any challenges with it. So just because it needs to go to the board's the final authority on this matter, that we're asking you to affirm the Planning Commission's decision and deny this request, knowing that we're going to go back and work with the town.
Thank you, Director Hayden, and so that it's understood, if this passes, this denial, that our Planning Commission is not going to drop this. Our Planning Commission and our staff will be working with the Township of Ness and trying to find something that works and is kind of homogeneous with the way that we do planning throughout St. Louis County. And I would look now for any questions from the board. Commissioner Fink and Commissioner Rocker.
Mr. Chair and Barb, based on Commissioner Forsman's comments and what's written here, if the town of Ness does not find a different approach to this, and we approve this based on what's written, does this mean that the applicant cannot come back to you with, or come back to us with what is proposed here?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, because this was submitted by the town, that is the town's request, so there's not a fee that's certainly gone to the town. We always look for the opportunity to work with towns whenever possible, but we do have the option for individual property owners that can request rezoning. But again, I think that they had a good dialogue with the Planning Commission on what they were looking for if they come back for rezoning.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rocker.
Thank you, Chair Forsman. I guess I just want to indicate that this is in my district, and it has. I certainly support the decision of the department and the Planning Commission to correct this situation, and I'm confident they're going to find some resolve to this. It's an issue that has to be resolved at the local level. people on both sides of the issue, supportive and not supportive of the zoning changes, and they'll have to work that out, but I'm confident that with the help of staff that they'll find some resolve, and this will come back to us through the Planning Commission in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rocker. Just so you know, is that I did move it and look for support with the idea that I'd take some of the heat off the commissioner from the district there until it's resolved there, so. I said that a little
Good plan.
bit. With that, any other comments? All in favor of said motion signify by the sign aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item, and I believe the final item that I have, is an issue. Oh, thank you, Director Hayden. Very much appreciated, Barb. We have a DNR request for easement sponsorship of the State of Minnesota School Trust land. This is an issue. We have Bob Krebs in the audience, and Bob has framed this issue for me, and I think that if we would, I will move it, and is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Krebs with the, so he can frame it for the board, and if you would there, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Bob Krebs, Land Commissioner for the county. We have an opportunity that is somewhat time sensitive, in that the DNR and the explanation, you know, in the letter is fairly self-explanatory. We're dealing with about 4 townships in northwestern part of St. Louis County, in which the state, the county, and Potlatch Corporation, Timber Corporation, are the predominant landowners in the area. There are some smaller tracts of private land, but within the 50,000 acres in the project area, we've got probably 90%, 16,000 acres of Potlatch-owned land, 15,000 acres of state school trust land, or state tax forfeited land, and 11,000 acres of state school trust land. Within that area, there's a network of roads that has been developed over the years by all the entities. Predominantly Potlatch Corporation, when they were, you know, in doing the initial harvest and management of their lands. As Potlatch has now transitioned into a real estate investment trust, their focus on forest management is decreasing, and their focus on land sales and real estate management is increasing. There's a very distinct possibility that within a very short period of time, the Potlatch lands will either be sold off in chunks or sold off in a larger mass to possibly another REIT or another timber management landholding company. So there's a concern by all 3 parties that when that happens, we will potentially lose the public access and the land management access into this particular area. Now, there are some other routes that we can take, and certainly prescriptive easement on the roads is one of them, but that's a lengthy process. And right now we have 3 interested parties sitting at the table willing to move forward with this particular area because of the large percentage of forest management land in the area. Our staff has been working with the state and with Potlatch for possibly 5 or 6 months in the deliberation to bring us to this point of agreement. The wrinkle in the whole thing is not the exchange of easements between Potlatch and the county, or Potlatch to the state, or Potlatch, you know, to us to the state. The wrinkle is the state of Minnesota, and they are unable to transfer easements to a private entity or to the tax forfeited trust, they have to transfer easements to a public road entity, even though these will continue to be minimum maintenance roads and not part of the system. The time-sensitive thing right now is the state needs to obligate the money to buy the easement. The DNR needs to obligate the money to buy the easements from the school trust fund, because you've got two different entities working there. And so we need board support of the concept of exchange of easements. With this board action, that will give the DNR the documentation that they can go and request and obligate the funds to buy the easements, where then they can transfer those to St. Louis County on behalf of Potlatch. And then we'll have a transfer of other easements a little further down the road. But I would stop at that and throw it open for questions.
Commissioner Fink?
Bob?
Yes.
I noticed on your map that that all the yellow places are or the orange places are the easements that you were looking at, and it's going across what is identified as DNR land. But a great deal of this discussion is on school trust. Is all the easements that you're looking for across tax forfeited land?
No, the easements included in this resolution are only those portions that go across school trust land. I have another map and I can get copies of this that shows all of the easements. The 10 miles that we're talking about here on the school trust is only about a quarter of the total miles, because there are access roads on tax forfeited land. There are access roads across Potlatch. They're not shown on your map. We tried to keep it focused on on specifically the easements that we're talking about in this resolution on the school trust lands.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of said motion signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Bob, for a good explanation, and good luck in the negotiations here. Mr. Chair, that is all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsman. Health and Human Services would be next. Commissioner Dahlberg.
Mr. Chair, I have before us one resolution. There's a board letter number 68. And this is a resolution appointing members to the St. Louis County Public Health and Human Services Advisory Committee. I have Public Health and Human Services Director Ann Bushy's here. And if it's okay with the administration, if we could have Ms. Bushy give us just a brief explanation of this resolution. The one thing, Ann, if you could tell the board exactly, you talk about there's an inequality in representation. Explain how we got there.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. You have before you a board letter and resolution appointing individuals to the Public Health and Human Services Advisory Committee. And several years ago, we had a Public Health Advisory Committee and a Human Services Advisory Committee. And when the department was created, the new Department of Public Health and Human Services, those two advisory committees merged. And so we knew that we would have inequities in distribution amongst the commissioners' districts. The goal is to have 2 commissioners or 2 appointees from each district and then 4 at large. As we have moved forward over time, we have attempted to try and equalize that out, but we really have not been successful at that. And so this is one of the reasons of putting this on the regular agenda, was to have that discussion with commissioners once again to say, how would you like us to continue to try and ensure that each commissioner has the 2 representatives. And so I think that there are a couple options.
Sure.
Or perhaps I'll turn it back over to you, Commissioner.
Well, sure, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things we had a chance to have a discussion with Ms. Bushy, and then also as far as inequality, and of course one of the reasons why it drew some attention to me is it affects my district, as far as I had one representative in there. And I had a chance to talk with both Commissioner O'Neill and also Commissioner Forsman, who, just because of the way this had worked out in the past, they had extra delegates in their areas. And so they were both very willing, cooperative to agree that what I would suggest here as a process is that we temporarily table this, put this on hold. And what I'd like to do is send out letters to the individuals that are already been recommended to be reappointed, or the new members that are in the districts of 2 and 4, that's Commissioner Forsman and O'Neill's, and ask them if anybody would voluntarily like to, kind of step aside at this point. And then during that time, I would look for a representative in my district to try to balance this out. And so that would be my recommendation, and we see that Commissioner O'Neill?
Thank you. No, I think that was a very good suggestion, Commissioner Dahlberg, and I will work on it. A couple things Ann, that would be helpful for me would be to know how many terms people have served, when they began, because I know I inherited, I think, all but one of the people from my district. So, so if I can get that sense, and I know some folks were on and then they had a break and then they've been back on, so that would probably be useful too.
Okay.
Commissioner Sweeney?
Yeah, and I too only have one in my district, but I originally appointed Tina Welch back oh dear, I can't remember, because she was presently on the Public Health Committee, and her appointment was up, and there was a new commissioner in that district who would not recommend. And I didn't have a name readily at hand at the time, and I do respect Tina's knowledge in that area and appointed her, and I think she continues to bring good things to the table. So I would just like for her not to be asked to leave, because actually she is my appointee, even though she lives in your district. Okay?
And I'm going to, if I may comment on that, and Commissioner Sweeney, I apologize, I missed that. And I think that it would be a proper suggestion if you could also balance it to give one more delegate to your district, if that's going to work.
It really doesn't matter at this time,
okay.
As long as, I mean, I know any number of these people who I feel are, I mean, they do an excellent job, so, that are Duluth area ones, so I don't have a problem with it at this time. When the next time there's one open, I'd like to look in my district again and see if I could find someone who is interested in participating.
Ms. Bushy?
But as things stand right now, I'm fine with this slate of people.
Apologize. Ms. Bushy, did you have a comment?
I just had one comment, or actually a clarification. The at-large individuals, I assume that those are going to be, I mean, we are allowed 4 at-large, and I would assume that there would be no changes made to the at-large candidates.
Okay.
Discussion? Commissioner Fink?
Well, I think there are 2 things that need to be done before we can do that. I think Commissioner O'Neill hit it on the head. We certainly need to know how long some has been on here. And there ought to be some, and I don't know whether there's a limit to that, so it would really be nice to know if that were the case. And I just wanted to point out that I'm not sure that it's about our district. I think Commissioner Sweeney said it right, as much as it is about who are their appointments. Because I recall the first time that I appointed somebody, I only appointed one from my district, but I also included one from Commissioner Crone's district, because it was a person that I felt comfortable that should be on that committee, such as Commissioner Sweeney was talking about as well. And so, I mean, when we think about what the strategy is here, we need to be careful to make sure that the commissioner gets the appointment, but not necessarily that they reside in that district, but it's their appointment. And I don't know if that's an issue or not, but it ought to be thought about, because we should be looking for the, I think, for what each commissioner thinks is the best person for their job, for the position, if in fact they're going to have one.
Commissioner Forsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments on it is that, you know, and I do support your thought on asking people if they truly want to serve, and with the explanation that you are trying to get a balance throughout the commissioners' districts. I did make the note that in the 4th district there are three candidates in the 4th district, and the closest that any of those three people live to each other is from Embarrass to White Lakes, which is about 20 miles or so, and the farthest is 50 miles from Ely to White Lakes, and I would submit that in any other district that the distance would be in blocks probably rather than miles, you know, just so that it's, you know, so distance does have something to do with it, but I do support that thought. The other thing, and I can't be really greedy, because if you look at Tony Kuzma from the 7th district, he was born in Ely and moved over to Commissioner Rocker's district. Rudy Samea was the basketball or football coach in Ely for many, many years and resided in Ely most of his life, and he represents the 6th district. Bill Wagner was a retired sergeant in the sheriff's department, born in Ely and only moved to the 5th district, Commissioner Sweeney's district, after he retired. And so I almost feel like I have 6 people on here, so I'm not feeling really beat up too bad if you pulled one person off there. So I just
Okay.
and I did try to, Rudy Samea and Bill Wagner, I did take and put their names in, you know, into the pot years ago. So
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Dahlberg. One of the things that I would like to point out is, if you look at the 6th district, you will see some fairly significant holes. I am very pleased with Rudy representing the Quad Cities. He's excellent. Hard worker. Just even though I had no part in his appointment, I will tell you, and you know, when we combined Health and Human Services, we made one mistake when we combined these two committees. That's my opinion. Because having been the board appointee to the Human Services Committee, which met on a very regular basis, we had very engaging meetings in Cotton. I will tell you that when we became the Health and Human Services Advisory Committee and started meeting exclusively down here in Duluth, the dynamics of that committee changed a lot. It is no longer anywhere near as engaging. It is no longer, in my opinion, as effective. So perhaps now is a very good time to look at making some changes, making certain that we revitalize the effectiveness of that committee. One of the things I did bring to administration and to the Director of Health and Human Services was the fact that all of the meetings were in Duluth. And we have since changed that. They are now meeting in the 4th, the 6th, and the 7th district at least once during the course of the year. I think that's important. I will tell you that I had a very good individual on there, but you know, she has a full-time job. And taking the time out of her schedule to go to Duluth for these meetings, it became something that she was no longer able to do. So by balancing those meetings out some and bringing them into greater St. Louis County, I think that is very important. I would also like, I don't have any problems having only one person from that 6th district if it's Rudy, because I know the 6th district voice is going to get heard there because Rudy is there. But folks, you know, if you look at that map, if you look at the total St. Louis County map, I'll point out to you that the dots for 10 and 16 are missing. And if they were there, you'd see that big cluster. And I guess I look at this and I say, at least from my standpoint and from Commissioner Sweeney's standpoint, that we've got a really big hole in the corridor townships that her and I represent. So if we look in the future to trying to gain some geographical distribution within that, I really think in fairness that we would also look at those corridor townships, whether it's Grand Lake, Friedenberg, going into Commissioner Sweeney's district, you know, Ganesen and North Star, all of those. That you know, there's a big area out there, and I would hope that we would be able to find someone, you know, from perhaps Cotton on down to Kenosha, that perhaps would serve as a representative. It doesn't have to be from my district, but I think it would be good to have someone from that geographical area, and perhaps Commissioner Sweeney and I could work on making certain that that happens going into the future. So you're not going to hear me make a big argument about only having one person in my district, but I am making a big argument that we look at making certain that that committee gets revitalized in the new mix, because that's not what I'm seeing. And I attended very, very regularly until it got down here, and I saw it losing its effectiveness. And I'll be honest with you, I lost interest in I didn't have the time to go and sit there and listen to the same thing or the same criticisms of the board and our actions. I mean, they're an advisory committee. Tell us what you're looking for, but you know, once we've made a decision, move on. Tell us what else is important, because it doesn't do a lot of good to go back and revisit decisions that have been made. So I look for this committee. There's a lot of really dynamic people on this committee. Pat Ives, the chair from Hibbing, and the couple that Mike had mentioned, both Rudy and Tony, vital members of that committee. But we need to look at the entire county, and we need to make sure that we do that irrespective of commissioner districts. I think it needs to happen on a geographical basis, and so please try to work with that committee, and if you would, to revitalize its efforts and bring forward the kinds of changes that are going to help us as we look to the future. Some tough times. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. I know there's two hands. Okay, Commissioner Sweeney.
I just wanted to mention that when I was chairing Public Health and Human Services, I attended both the public health meetings and I attended the human services meetings. The public health ones were always held in Duluth, and they were held over the lunch hour. And those were very well attended by not just Duluth people, but people from all over. Some very dedicated people from one coming down from Ely, one from Virginia, at least that I was aware of. There were at least 3 range representatives who were always there. And quite often they didn't have a quorum because Duluth area people weren't available. So I really think it's not so much where they're coming from, it's more, you know, their availability to get away at the times of day that these committees are meeting. And so we had some people then that were able to get away from their jobs or whatever they were doing and come down for that. Traditionally, the Human Services one had been in Cotton. And again, that actually was more poorly attended than the Health Committee was, the one that's at Cotton. And it had nothing to do with the geography. It had to do with not feeling that there were agenda items to attend to every month. And so people just kind of lost interest because there wasn't a need for this thing. So I think in combining the two and looking at more going to a every other month or every 3 month kind of a schedule would hopefully ensure that people would set aside that time and come for a real meeting, that there were things to discuss and things going on. And I don't know, because I haven't, since they've been combined, I don't believe I have attended one of their meetings. I may have attended one. But, so I don't know, but I didn't see that imbalance kind of thing just because it was in Duluth. I saw them getting there. But I think it's really important that however many times the meetings are, that people feel they have a reason to take off time from whatever their busy schedules are to come to a meeting. And that was more important to them than the logistics of the meeting itself. So.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Forsman?
Two things, and just for clarification on the map, if you look at the large map there, the 14 that, you have two 14s on it, the 14 on the, is actually 16, and then just so that everyone's clear on that.
Only the 10 that's missing.
Yeah, and the 10 is missing. Then the other thing is that if you fold your St. Louis County in half, you know, and the line, as I've always said, goes just a little bit north in Worry Township up in Britt there and stuff, there are only 2 northern representatives on here. All the rest are from southern St. Louis County. But I like to point that out because of the vastness of St. Louis County. I'm not really picking, because I understand we are talking about population, not necessarily about geography there. So just so it's out.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
so
Commissioner
there's
Forsman.
number 10 is actually in, that's that second number 9 that's there. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, there is
There are
a
two
second
number
9 too, yeah.
So that should be a 10,
Right.
and that would be,
So it would
okay.
appear that's a project for you.
Fuzzy math, huh?
Any other discussions? Commissioner O'Neill?
Thank you, Chair Dalbert. Well, Mike, you know, I love trees, and when we have a tree committee, you're going to be well represented. The county is going to be on the low end.
And deer committee?
Deer committee, moose committee, you're going to get a lot of those. I do want to say, I go to the committee meetings regularly. I think they've been good meetings, well attended, very engaging. I do have to say I'm on intergovernmental now, so I'm aware of all the intergovernmental activities, and it's been enjoyable and good work. But I know no attempt of Duluth to annex Pike Lake. And our meetings have been in Pike Lake. And the committee, for whatever reasons, have decided, you know, that they like Pike Lake, they like that facility and so on. So while it's towards Duluth, it is outside of Duluth a little bit.
In Kenosha County.
It is in Kenosha County, exactly. So, but as Commissioner Nelson said, I think we've got that resolved. The committee is moving around now. And so I think this was a good request, Commissioner Dahlberg, and I think we'll work to make this happen.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm sorry,
Commissioner
excuse
Fink.
me, if I may just ask, are we then sending this back to the department? Is that what your request is?
That is.
To do a little more work on this and get some numbers and whatever?
Thank you. I think,
I-
no, I'm
that
just going to
was
look for
clear.
kind of consensus here, is that my recommendation would be send it back to the department, kind of rework, of course, the numbers on there, but also, as Commissioner O'Neill asked for, if we could get the dates that they've served, and also perhaps disseminate that back to the commissioners, and with the idea that we'd probably come back and bring this on maybe a committee of the whole the next week. Would that be, are we going to be meeting next week, or what's next week?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Is that okay to wait 2 weeks on this?
Oh, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I think that, yeah, waiting 2 weeks is fine, and if commissioners would like, you could certainly allow me to bring it back when we're ready.
Okay.
It may be that, you know, when we send letters out, it would be sometime before those individuals would reply, and then, you know, give commissioners an opportunity to see if there are other individuals in their districts or someone that they would like to put on the list that maybe isn't on the list right now, and then, you know, we can shoot for, so 2 weeks might not be quite enough time to do all of that work.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Dahlberg. Help me out just a little bit here. Are we then going to be soliciting applications within commissioners' districts? Is that what I'm hearing here? We're going to be looking for applications in Commissioner Dahlberg's district? And if so, then, you know, we should look at taking care of that inequity in Commissioner Sweeney's and mine at the same time.
That's what if I may, Commissioner Nelson, I agree with that. And I think also, why don't, and I'll get to the county administrator in a second. My suggestion would be is that we go forth from here and sort of do feelers out there in our community, and not saying that there is this opening, but that that openings arise periodically, and then sort of get some names that we have in mind, so that way we're proactive. County Administrator Mitchell.
Okay. So Commissioner Nelson is clear. My understanding is we're simply removing it from the agenda. That Ann will have staff send a letter out to the current persons recommended and see if any of them are willing to step down from the committee, and commissioners can make suggestions if they have somebody from their district and the districts that are short who might want to serve. We're not sending out new publication or notice asking for applicants and that. It's up to the commissioners if they have somebody who, because this is a commissioner's appointment, so it's whether or not you have somebody that you would like to appoint from the districts that are short. And then after all that information is brought back, then we'll see how it fits. I did ask the question on this particular board letter and these applicants, if there were any other applicants, and these were all the people that applied when this was open at this time. So now we're down to commissioners recommending if they have some.
So commissioners, in a minute, we'll remove this. Is everybody comfortable and understand and agree with what County Administrator Mitchell said, that that's the game plan? Okay, and I wanted to build on to this, is that we also started to have a little bit of discussion, and I don't want to continue on that, as far as you know, the value of this and some other possible tweaking of this committee. And so what I would like is I would encourage county commissioners, as I'm the chair of this committee, speak with me offline, give me emails if you want to, do another time down the road that we have further discussion, we can. So, Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Dahlberg. There's just a couple of things that I really want to make certain of, having just recently left this committee, and a couple of things that I felt were very, very crucial. One, I want to make certain that these meetings remain noticed, publicly noticed, so that people have access and can attend them. I want to make certain that that the public comment portion remains at the beginning of these meetings. That is an important piece, even though the vice chair doesn't think it is, or the former vice chair, I don't know if she still is, didn't think it was very important. I think that's really important that we have that piece, because this is an advisory committee and they should be taking public input throughout this process. So those two things, I know this is an advisory committee, but I think along with appointing members, this board has to make absolutely certain that this remains open to the public and that the public has the time slot available to make comments to this advisory committee at their agenda times during their complete committee meetings. So if we make sure those two things occur, I'm okay with the balance.
If there's no further discussion, and would it be proper then that I would move to, at this point, remove it from the agenda? Is that proper? I would.
All you have to do is.
All you have to do is
and
remove
then
Just
send
remove it,
back
right?
to-
Okay.
Just send it.
back to the department.
Without any vote.
Yep.
So then we'll remove it and send it back. Thank you, Ann, and you're going to hang around a little bit? Okay, thank you.
Would that conclude
And that
your
would
agenda?
conclude, thank you, Mr. Chair.
It is good. Let's see, that took 15 minutes to have no discussion. No.
Yes.
No decision.
No decision, yes. Public Safety and Corrections, Commissioner Sweeney, Chair.
I have one, and it is the Viper 911 software maintenance warranty contract. And we should be able to do this. It should be a slam dunk. We save 1/3 of the price by paying for the full 4-year contract up front, which is being recommended. It will cost us $48,102.88 for the 4-year period, or we can pay it 1 year at a time, and it will cost us $75,466.68. So I would move the resolution paying for the 4-year contract at this time. And is there a second?
Support.
Any questions, concerns? Commissioner Nelson?
Only question I have is to administration. In the board letter, it indicates payment would be made from E911 funds and no levy money.
That's correct.
Very good.
Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, discussions, items, reports, other concerns? Commissioner Dahlberg, I understand you have something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I do. I'm going to pass these around if we could kind of make their way around. And I'd like to open up for discussion as the Chair of the Public Health and Human Services, an issue that's getting on the, I wouldn't even say the back burner, starting on the foreburner. And if, again, the Public Health and Human Service Director, Ann Bushy, would like to come up front, but I'll just briefly a couple words, and then I'll maybe pass it on to County Administrator Mitchell, and then Director Ann Bushy. But what's going on?
There's a second sheet there. It didn't come.
Does everybody have a copy of what's been passed around?
Same thing.
I'd like to, I guess maybe what I'll start is I'm going to be the one that's sort of, I think sometimes the administrator frames the discussion. I'll maybe start to frame it. But I wanted just to draw your attention to the 2 documents I sent out. And the one is the Human Service Authority Act. And what's going on, for those that aren't familiar, and this is the reason why I'm kind of spurring this more, is I was at an Arrowhead Counties Association meeting, and we had the Public Health and Human Service Directors from around the region, a lot of them. We had Commissioner Fink and I were in attendance. It was good background as far as other county commissioners. And the issue of the Human Service Authority was brought up. And for those that aren't familiar with what's going on, Governor Pawlenty is really hot on this issue that he wants to have collaboratives. And I know we're already doing collaboratives. But he wants to have this idea of 15 collaboratives across the state of Minnesota. And it's kind of right now, he's really using the stick and not the carrot. And so the idea is either you go with this plan, and that's where this other second sheet was, and I can direct commissioners. If you look down to the department heads meeting budget update back in February 4th, they talked about the county aid there, and they give 2008, 2009, 2010, but what they talk about is what's going to happen if you don't play the game. And so what's going on right now in this act, if you look on the, I think it's the second page under subdivision 5 county duties, it talks about the deadlines that we have. And so what I'm going to be throwing this out, and maybe I'll give more discussion in a second, because there's a lot involved in this, is that what are we going to do as a county as far as what's our decision making? I mean, do we get involved ahead of this game? And I see, as far as what I've been following, chairing this, is that there are some opportunities here. Is that we can look, and what I'd like to do, and kind of my idea, and we'll get some follow-up on this, is to have our director go forward and just have conversations. It doesn't commit us at all, but start to talk about the other regions. What can we do? And is there some way that we can make lemonade out of honey? Or, excuse me, lemonade on lemons? And the issue is this, is that we already know there's maintenance of efforts issues, and they say, you've got to stay to those, we're not going to change those. But can we come back in the end, and maybe this can't be tied, is say, okay, Governor, we're going to play the game, and we're going to do this, but what we're also going to do is we're going to say, part of this is we recognize you're trying to save costs, and here's how we'd like to save costs, is these MOEs no longer make sense. Now, I've also talked with our lobbyist down, John Ungaro, about this, and we're getting some background as to how hot is the governor on this. I mean, is this going to just fail, and we don't even have to worry about this? And so Kevin Goodhue, who used to be the thank you, and he was a legislator, former Department of Health and Human Services Director, knows him, he's a lobbyist. He says the governor is hot on this. This could be his baby, so he's not going to let go on this. So that means we can't just say, let's see what happens. I think we have to to get out front with this. And then I also asked John Ungaro, can we link this? John's advice to us was, I don't think it's really going to be advantageous at this point because there's some legislation on MOEs right now that might be successful. But he says if that doesn't happen in May, or he thinks the legislature will go through till June, then what we should probably do is see if we can try to link those two. And again, what the chances of this are, I don't know. So hopefully I framed it enough to get us on some good discussion, and I think where I'm heading is, I don't want, and I've been working closely with Ms. Bushy here, is I don't want her to be going out there without some guidance from the board as far as saying, yes, this is what we authorized you to do, and because this is going to take some substantial amount of her time. I'm sort of giving her some cover, as they say in the military, and you know, saying that this is our guidance. So with that, maybe I'm going to go first to the county administrator. If you have comments, and then perhaps, and then to Ms. Bushy.
And Mr. Chair, I'll make my comments now, that's fine. First, I want the board to be aware that this didn't just come up with the very recent actions of drafting the legislation. Now, I spoke with Ann Bushy about this 3 weeks ago and talked about the need to at least start discussing it with 2 counties that, in my discussions with her, were reasoned that I'm not going to get into at this meeting, but it wasn't all of the counties, and it was to simply discuss what opportunities there might be with those 3 counties. And then subsequent to that time, there was a meeting, I believe, with northern counties or Arrowhead counties, and Ann was asked to come to the meeting, and apparently a lot of other social service people from all of the counties were asked to be there, and they had conversation that led to a decision that all of these directors should get together and talk about and come up with a list of things they could do together and could not do together in the counties, and try to provide that list. And then it was then brought into administration after that and presented to administration as getting a resolution to this board to authorize the social service director to meet with these other directors to prepare this list. And at that point, we discussed the fact that I don't agree with that. I will say to this board right now, I don't agree with that. And the reasons I don't agree with that is further supported, and this isn't a surprise on Commissioner Dahlberg at all, because this didn't come in, well, it may have came in while we were discussing this last night, but I didn't take it off my computer until about 6 o'clock last night. But I'm going to hand out a sheet that AMC sent out just yesterday, and everybody may have received it, you may not have, but I'm going to hand it out because I'm going to talk about it in a minute. I'm going to give you a chance to take a look at it first. I did have that conversation with Commissioner Dahlberg about not agreeing that we should be running out to all these multiple counties and asking them to put together this list of things we can do and can't do together, because I don't believe that that is going to have any substantial effect on the legislature, or that's what the legislature is going to be looking at. And then immediately after I had that first conversation with Commissioner Dahlberg, this proposed piece of legislation came up. And then I read the piece of legislation, and then that led to a second conversation with Commissioner Dahlberg last night, a couple of short conversations in between with Ann Bushy about this whole concept, etc. And then it gets to where I still believe what I said the first time, that going out and meeting with these counties is quite frankly a waste of time, in my opinion. And if the board disagrees, then we'll put something together to go and do it, but here's why it's a waste of time. You read the legislation, they are not in any way asking us to come with a list of things you can do and you can't do. They've already made a decision to submit a bill. And that bill goes down and talks about the things that we were already aware of as to the size of these regional social service areas and the the funding by the commissioner and designating people into them if you don't voluntarily going in there and setting up a time schedule, etc. So bringing a list to the legislature that says here are things we can do together and things we can't do together, they're going to say, so here's the bill, that's what you've got, 2010, 2011, and 2012 to do. You know, now go figure out how you're going to come together with your joint powers agreement. And that's exactly what they're saying in this. After we pass this bill, then you go put your list together. So you coming to us with a list now doesn't help a thing. Now, if you read, and like I said, I handed this off for purpose, and like I said, it's not surprising, honestly, Commissioner Dolberg, like I said, I didn't get this off until after you left my office last night and you were already gone, but AMC sent out this document on the talking points that AMC is looking at. And if you look at the third bullet down, one of the things they say is AMC has not had an opportunity to review bill language with members, and time is needed to examine specifics before the association can offer additional comments or options on the specifics of the proposal. If you go down to the fifth bullet, it talks about county officials agree with the goals mentioned up above, but whether this proposal in its present form is the best way to achieve it. If you go to the very last bullet, and there's much more in between if you read all of it, but I'm just highlighting the ones that I think support what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, and that is AMC views this proposal as an opportunity to explore how to best meet the shared goals of the state, counties, and communities. And I agree, it is an opportunity, and it is certainly something that we want to look at. But if the board is going to do something at this time, it's my opinion, only my opinion. I told Commissioner Dahlberg I would say this, so it's my opinion, and everybody else's opinion is probably better than mine here because you all have a vote and I don't. But it's my opinion that if you're going to do something at this point, you either have to pass a resolution that says you don't support the legislation because you haven't had time, and we can work up a nice resolution that works to it and is very nice and is not offensive, etc., but that says you still don't support it at this time. Or it's better to simply let it go through, and then in a year, when you've had an opportunity to take a look at how it truly is going to affect you because you've had adequate time to look at it and see the positives and the minuses and put together a document that makes sense, going back to the legislature and saying, here's why this isn't going to work. And as I said to Commissioner Dahlberg, I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons. We talked about MOEs last night in my office and that, and I don't think it's an issue about whether MOEs are going to go through or not going to go through, etc. What's left, the issue is we all have varying degrees and levels of responsibilities under our current maintenance of efforts. Our maintenance of efforts in the very same area is probably extremely different than Lake County or Cook County or Carleton County or whatever else. So we can all go in there and say, we can't do this because of MOEs, but unless we put together how our maintenance of effort, because we started the program earlier than the other counties and the state is putting more money in, or until we can get that information together, doesn't really give us a good, strong basis to say why we can't work together in this area unless you eliminate the maintenance of efforts. And are they going to eliminate all maintenance of efforts? Probably not. Are they going to bring them down to a different level? Maybe. Are they going to do something? Fine. But until they do that, then we don't have the basis to argue about why we can't all work together in that maintenance of efforts. And there are other programs. The other counties do not necessarily have all the same programs that we have here in St. Louis County. And we can go out and we can talk about the programs that we all have in unison that we can't work on together, but we haven't addressed how are we going to carry forward the programs that we all have differently, or how we staff them different, or how we deal with them differently. So my point in my discussions with Chris and a little bit with Commissioner Fink earlier in the day yesterday was, if the board wants to pass a resolution to, in fact, run out with the other administrators in the county, in the counties around us, surrounding us, get them all involved, etc., and go down and present a list of where we can work and can't work when it doesn't have anything to do with this particular bill, that's perfectly fine, that's what we will do. But what you pay me for is to come and tell you why I don't believe it's the right thing to do or why I believe it is the right thing to do. And I'm telling you, I don't believe it's the right thing to do based upon this particular bill. But if you want us to draft a resolution that says you oppose this bill because of some of these same talking points here, we can certainly do that. If you want to do nothing and let it go its course and then work during the next year to determine whether or not, and I want to point out the timelines at this point too, just so you're clear on it. The timelines are, you have to submit a resolution by June 1st, 2010. November 1st, 2009. But that's simply a resolution that says we intend to do it. You've fulfilled your commitment by saying we intend to do it. By June 1st, 2010, you actually have to then say what other counties you're going to anticipate to be members. You don't really have to have your joint powers agreement until 2011, and that's June of 2011. So you really have 2 additional legislative sessions after to go back and talk about why this thing is or isn't working, or isn't going to work as you go through all that process. So again, I'll be happy to address any other questions. And yes, there is a monetary effect, and it was handed out. And I just did the calculations so that folks understand, by not doing the first resolution, which I'm not here proposing you don't do, I'm actually proposing, if this goes through, you do the first resolution, because you're talking about over just the 2-year period, 2009, 2010, $2,690,421 at least, as the governor proposed it. You lose $1,160,104 the first year, and you lose $1,530,317 the second year, for a total of $2,690,421 as the governor proposed it. So I'm certainly not here saying don't cooperate, don't do anything, don't send the resolution.
Point of clarification, you said the first resolution, you mean the date specifically November 1st, 2009?
No, November 1st, 2009 resolution, it simply says you intend to do it.
But that's what you mean?
Yes. Okay, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as they come up.
What I'm going to do is, because we got a couple hands up here, and looks like we're also getting close to lunch here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to push this through till 12:30, and then we'll go, if that's okay with the chair, and we'll go to lunch at that point. Can we continue
Talk to
on?
me. Is anybody concerned about going that far?
Can we hang on?
Well,
'Cause
I think it's, no, because I'm not coming back after lunch.
okay, then can we continue on?
There are other things that we have to do. I know
If
it's
somebody
just
gets
reports and
in
whatever.
trouble before then, let's...
We've got a lot of hands, and here's what I'm going to do too, because I'm the newbie and I'm the new chair of this. And I want to take sort of a time out. We got a few people, commissioners, that want to speak, but I wanted to recognize, first of all, County Administrator Mitchell. Thank you. And we had some good frank discussions, and this is what I expect going forward as a county commissioner, is that County Administrator and I, and the future one, we're open on this. And then as I pass the torch on to Ann, I want to recognize the fact that County Administrator Mitchell gave his opinion. And now I'm turning to the director of a department, and I'm asking for you to give a little bit of groundwork on this and frame this from your perspective, give your background, and then what I'm going to do is turn it back to the county commissioners and start to have a discussion just like that, if that's okay. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that the counties in this region really have a good history of collaborating with one another. We have very good working relationships. I do, I guess, with the other directors of public health and human services. And so, this is not kind of a foreign concept to us. I think that, of course, that where we struggle with the concept is kind of this top-down approach to it versus letting those counties build it up from the bottom up in a way that makes sense. I will say that I go to MACSA, which is the Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administrators, and this past week I was there, and the membership there did take a position that opposed this legislation. And then they took a secondary position to propose something different that really was more in alignment with where the directors were coming from building this kind of from the bottom up, really consistent with the AMC talking points as well. The only other comment, and so I really looked for guidance from the commissioners as far as, you know, what you want me to do, how you want me to proceed, et cetera. The only other, maybe it's a clarification or an interpretation, is I was at the Arrowhead Counties Association meeting, and there was conversation about making a list. I viewed it more as there are many things that the counties do on behalf of the state that we really do pretty consistently. You know, financial workers, child support, the rules and regulations are so set by the state that there's very little flexibility, if any, between the counties. And so those might be things that were easier to achieve in this type of new model. And then there might be other things that are a little bit more difficult because we do things differently in the different counties. And my understanding, and the commissioners that were at that meeting can perhaps clarify, was that that list was not to go to the legislature, but that list was to go back to either the Arrowhead counties or back in some format. I don't know if it had been really prescribed for further discussion. And I think my concern is that as the Director of Public Health and Human Services, I didn't want to kind of walk too far down the road with perhaps the Arrowhead Counties Association, because there were only 2 commissioners there. And there are 7 commissioners that served on this board. And so my concern was making sure that all of the commissioners were kind of aware of what was happening or where we were proceeding. And so those are my thoughts.
Okay.
And I would be happy to answer any
And with that,
questions
as there
well.
was one of the commissioners that was there, and he was the first to raise his hand, Commissioner Fink.
Thank you. I think what's really on the table here is a number of things. The first is that the governor has a proposal. It's hard to tell what the motivation of that proposal really is. We have been advised to recall that this governor was a legislator when he proposed, along with a number of other folks, that there only be 15 counties. Seems interesting that that number would be the same today as it was in 1991, 92, and 93 when there was this huge discussion about how many counties there should be. Actually, he was proposing 15 counties outside of the metro area, and then 4 within the metro area, which exists today. So there is an issue here. I think AMC's response to what are we looking at here is to say, do you really want to go down the road that begins the process of moving us towards 15 counties? And that comes along with the process that says we have been collaborating. We're not just collaborating on social services, but we're collaborating on almost everything that this county does, either with another county to do some other to do things, or with the municipals within the counties, or certainly around that process. And no shortness of that was the 2 resolutions that were on the committee of the whole today, which show that just for striping, that we've looked to how much can we get done for the summer, and let's get this person in here, and the more miles they do, the less cost it is per mile. And so who do we partner with to get that done? But the issue then comes up to the second point. And the second point is the governor demanding a change, or did he throw a carrot out there and say, hey, I got a proposal, give me some proposals back? And we don't know the answer to that. If we buy into 15 counties outside of the metro area, then it would be, let's go full force and say, no, this is a bad proposal, and just beat it up. But what if he's actually asking, as he has a couple of times over the last couple of years, for organizations to come through and say, look, you might be thinking along this line, but that's not the way we could get it done. That there are concepts and thought processes that would say, here's what we share already, here's how we share, what models we already have in place, and oh, by the way, maybe there's a different model. In the southwest corner of the state, for example, they've already made a proposal that says, we're already doing some of these things in our small counties. But in northeastern Minnesota, if you look at Region 3, or you look at the AMC, or you look at AMC's district, what we're talking about is a huge county. and then a whole group of those small counties, and how do we do it compared to what somebody else on the western side where they're all small counties? Is there uniqueness to that? And oh, by the way, there is some discussion at this particular point that being larger is not necessarily better when it comes to talking to specific people. For example, does Cook County do a better job because they only have 15 people that comes into the system? I'm exaggerating here. They only have 15 or 20 people that comes into the system, but they got 4 people that are working on it, so they get better, they get one-stop shopping on all the things that are there. But are we better because we have this expert in each area, but we've got to send our one person around to 5 or 6 different people? There's a lot of debate that needs to go on this. And Mr. Mitchell's right. If you look at the legislation, it says, well, we're going to give you 4 years, but the question is there a consequence that's not intended at this particular point, couched around the social services piece? So I think we're not talking about a list here. What we're talking about is options, and what we're talking about is getting ahead of the curve with this concept of maybe this is a carrot. But regardless of anything, there's a stick here. He absolutely intends, this governor intends to say that if I get my way and you produce this we produce this legislation, you're going to play. There's going to be no opting out, because if you opt out, I'm going to take away something that you should have. And the answer is that an acceptable way to get where he wants to go? And I don't think so. And what the question came up at AMC, or at Arrowhead Counties, is we were listening to all the commissioners and many of the social services director in the area, and they were saying, you know what? We already do lots of stuff, and yet we all don't know about it. And that was the issue. Can you start informing us as policymakers? What is it that you really do together? And oh, by the way, is there a District 1 or a region, is this Region 3, is this going to play in what are the options if there were going to be there? Nobody is arguing at this particular point that we decide where the boundaries are. In fact, more than anything, we're wondering if this is the time that we talk about eliminating the boundaries, and is that really where this organization wants to go in the long run? With all things, not just, this is just a starting point.
Thank you, Commissioner Fink. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Dahlberg. I think if you go to the second to the last line on this statement here that they're quoting the governor, I think there's a sentence there that pretty much frames it and says it all. They could earn back part, operative word, yes, part, yep, of the county aid they would otherwise lose. Now, you know, I've only been on this board 6 years and a couple of months, but let me take you back down memory lane just a little bit, if I may. This governor did not worry about talking to county government when he controlled one of the bodies of the legislature. But right now, he controls neither of them. All of a sudden, let's go out and be all-inclusive. Let's bring county in so that I can partner them against the legislature. I have to tell you, we are not policymakers. We are administrators. I know I differ in my opinion on that than some of my fellow commissioners, but we are not policymakers. The state sends this down to us, and we will then be administering it. And folks, this is a battle. If you want to talk to your local legislator, great. I think that every one of us does that on a regular basis. But I have to tell you, these collaboratives where we go into, you know, you look at this bill specifically, targets 250,000 people or more, okay? I would call this the Tommy Rukavina version of this bill, because Tommy loves using that number too, because that draws no controversy from the 7-county metro, because they're all in excess of that. And all of the other small counties don't really have a say in this gig. So to do anything other than oppose this at this point, and try to support our legislators as they try to make this something that has a face to it, because this does not. This is targeting cuts this is the continued attack on human services that has been there for a long, long time. But now he's trying to get us to be his partners in it. Now, I'm sorry, I just don't understand how we get involved in these things. I do not want my job, and I only have one. I represent 28,000 people in the 6th district of St. Louis County. And I don't want us to be the benevolent big brother. We have a lot of counties around us that would love to have the resources that we have here. They don't have the tax base. They also don't have the needs. But you know, I have heard commissioners in other counties tell me, we don't have a homeless problem. We send them to St. Louis County. These are elected officials that flat out, we just don't have that problem because we send them to St. Louis County. I don't know that that's true. I know that that's what other commissioners tell me.
That's true.
So with that said, folks, there's a lot of flushing out that needs to take place here. And we all, I am sure, will go as individuals to our legislators to have those discussions. But from my standpoint, there are too many unknowns for us to get involved. I do not want to collaborate with 8 other counties or 7 other counties. I mean, if I get forced into it, I may want to collaborate with 1 or 2, only if I'm forced into it. But folks, there's a long session in front of us, and there's an announcement today that'll look an awful lot like $6.2 billion. And I'm sorry, I don't know that we're going to see this rise to the forefront, even though this governor is trying to partner with the counties. I'm pleased that AMC is taking the point that hey, we just don't think it's a good idea at this point in time. Or give it back to us and let us look at it. But I would make the motion that we oppose this today.
I'll support it.
And we'll go from there.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner. Commissioner.
That was what I was going to bring up, is that we
Can I just point out one thing in this bill so that as people are talking about, they understand a little bit better, and I know you haven't necessarily had a chance to read, but you may have, but although I mentioned the time periods of the intent to get in, I mentioned the fact that you have 2 more legislative sessions to go down and oppose it. The interesting part is, although it seems to give the county the opportunity to choose, if you go to subdivision 7 and read it very closely, you will find that you don't really have the option to choose, because subdivision 7 goes through a series of events that allows the commissioner to simply assign a county into one of these consortiums. And it really gives them the authority to do it. In fact, I think it's subdivision D, or subdivision 7D, that basically says if you haven't joined one by that time, he's to place you in one. So it really doesn't give you the option, which I think is a strong argument against this particular piece of legislation as it's written, because it doesn't even truly give you the option to decide how to exercise local operations of social services. So again, for more reasons than just the talking points, some of the things in the specific bill, more and more a decision to oppose it. One other point, just so it's clear and everybody thinks about this, I understand Commissioner Nelson's motion. That motion is already there by the Association of Directors, and it's already there, I think, by some others, and I guess it doesn't hurt if this county makes the motion as well and adds that support to it. On the other side, I don't know that it's truly necessary because it's there and then just working over the next couple of years, but that is a policy decision of the board, whether you make policy or not, but it's a policy decision of the board whether to, at this point, go forward with an objection to the legislation or simply to allow it to work its way through with the others objecting to it, et cetera, and then looking at a future assault, I'll call it a future assault on the legislation that does pass. But those are just other comments so you understand what's really in this bill under the assignment part.
Thank you.
Pretty onerous, actually.
Commissioner O'Neill, Commissioner Sweeney.
The only other thing that I wanted to say, and jumped on too fast there, was that, I don't see where this eliminates the need for the individual counties to have an administration, an administrative cost. I think it's going to be another layer of government stuck in here. Because I don't see how somebody from over here can be directing the activities in each one of these. I mean, if that's what you're going to have. They're going to be overseeing, but they're not going to be the director who is handing out the daily assignments and the whatever. So I don't think you're going to change anything from that administrative thing. I think you're adding another layer of administration into this whole thing, and I think that's the one thing they haven't thought about. When you get to county the size of ours, why do you think you don't do it in the metro counties? Because they've got this mechanism set up. They've got, these hundreds of thousands of people that they're dealing with, and they couldn't possibly combine that all into one, which would make some sense. Look at the geography of it. That would make sense to make that. But to take us out here, where we go from the Canadian border down to Duluth, up to the Canadian border that way, and then how far west are we going to go? How much farther south? There are several configurations that you could look at. We got the Carleton, Cook, Lake, and St. Louis County Health Boards. We've got the Arrowhead Counties grouping. We've got, and that's different than the regional radio boards, and it's different than the Human Services region. So each one of these is a different size region, but any one of them puts us in a position of how are you going to localize where the administration of this is going to be, and then how does that eliminate the individual counties from needing just as much staff to administer and get this process out there? I don't see it happening. And it puts a lot of miles that somebody is going to be traveling to deliver those services if you did eliminate them out in Carleton or Cook or Lake counties, because somebody's going to be driving from, this area to go deliver those services, to be in you don't even eliminate buildings, you don't eliminate staff, how does this do anything? Other than unless you're moving to the idea of, as Commissioner Fink has suggested, that there would be 15 counties, and that the county seat of this county might be in Grand Rapids, or it might be in Virginia, which would be fine. I mean, I'm sure there's range commission. But I mean, that's what you come down to. And just think about how many people a commissioner would then be representing. It would not be 28,000 people. Or are we going to go to the system that they have in Wisconsin, where you got 30 people sitting on a board, or 40 people sitting on a board, and it becomes like a mini legislature? I mean, there's just lots of places that they haven't even gone that will cost more money and make our system, bog down and break. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk so long, but
Commissioner Sweeney, and I'm going to wrap this up. I'd like to make a couple comments. Is that as far as what County Administrator Mitchell said, it's true on the assignment. He acknowledged one point is that the commissioner can assign counties, or sort of, we call them the ugly stepchild or whatever. But I think there's some being proactive. We can bring in certain ones. County Administrator Mitchell made a point that there's two options, and attorneys love options. And always one of the options an attorney is always going to give you is do nothing. I mean, that's always part of the advice. But he mentioned that we can say we don't want to be part of this at this time. It's not worth it. The other one is we can do the wait and see and really do nothing. I recognize, though, I would put forward that there's a third option for the county. And the legislature is in session. And the third option is this. We acknowledge what's going on, and we go forward, and we actually get engaged with the resolution ultimately to our legislative delegation saying, this is what we want. We recognize that there's some positives of this, and at the same time, by the way, these MOEs that we've addressed, we would like to do that. And what I started at the beginning of this conversation is that we only direct the department head to go forward and start some discussions, and then come back, and I think she's already identified some possibilities, is find out, where we could actually work together, perhaps where we could come up with some ideas on MOEs that might be shared. And what I'm going to end this on, and maybe a little surprise here, a little drama, is this was only a discussion matter, brought up, and I think we had a great discussion. It's my intention, I'm looking to probably bring this forward as a resolution, as a directive to our department head. And not today, but not today, in the
There's a
future.
resolution on the floor right
We have
now.
No,
a
there's not.
resolution on the
Yes,
floor.
we do have a resolution on the floor.
Yeah, you got
There's a motion on the floor, Mr.
Yep.
Chair. Point of order.
Because I thought this was,
However, it was recommended that that motion not be acted upon, and it would,
well, Paul,
so you
because I thought
have an
this was open.
opportunity to
No.
withdraw.
Actually,
Well,
point of order, Mr. Chair and Chair.
okay, yeah,
A motion was made and supported.
Yeah.
okay.
I agree.
And I thought this was as open discussion, and there would be motions brought forward, but I was misunderstood. But then, if there's a motion, there's been a motion on the floor, is correct? And
Correct.
could you state the motion again?
Motion is that this board would take a stand against this legislation.
Okay,
That's the motion.
okay. Well, that's fine. So the motion
We
is,
said joint legislators.
the motion is at this point that we're doing a stand against the legislation as it's been presented to us right here. Do I have a second on that?
I seconded it.
Second, okay, now, so
It's
open for
supported.
discussion, and maybe we've been
I thought
discussing.
that's what we were doing.
Commissioner Forsman actually supported it.
So has
No, I
it
did too,
been, has it
but
been
that's all right.
already
Fine.
seconded sometime?
It has,
Yes.
you just need a vote.
Is there any final discussion on this at this point? So that the motion is that at this point, we would say, we go on record saying that we oppose this legislation, okay? All in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so 5-2 vote.
Are you done, sir?
I am done, thank you.
Okay.
And thanks everyone for the time.
Is there anyone else who has any discussion items or reports that's necessary? Commissioner Nelson?
Mr. Chair, very, very briefly, attended a meeting yesterday with MnDOT on the rail at the request of the chair of our rail authority, and also of the Alliance, Commissioner Rocker. And the only thing that I think that's important to report back to this board at this point, there's many more things, but the important part is MnDOT is going to be doing some outreach, some public sessions on the rail plan, and through our rail authority, and I actually invited MnDOT that we in Duluth would love to host one of those. We gave that message to Representative Reinert, and hopefully we will be hosting a MnDOT rail plan meeting here in Duluth within the next 30 to 45 days. If we do so, it is going to be important to have a great deal of support there, and that's why I'm bringing that forward at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I have a particular, go ahead. On
The
this
report.
particular issue,
No, not on this issue.
on this particular issue, the rail authority attended, the rail authority will host. Is that your concept?
Mr. Chair, I'm bringing that back to this board because the individuals who serve on the rail authority serve at the will of this board, and I really don't have, the rail authority could certainly host it, or St. Louis County could host it. I guess that would be a decision of this
You were
board.
not considering that at all. All you were considering is to say that there would be a meeting in Duluth.
There will be a meeting in Duluth, and
Thank you.
it's just information coming back to this board.
Commissioner Forsman?
On the, yesterday, Commissioner O'Neill and myself attended the Community Health Board. Commissioner O'Neill was elected the chair of the Community Health Board yesterday, and we did have a real good presentation on the initiative, on the state's initiative on mesothelioma, the plan going forward from the state and the University of Minnesota, and so that is in the works, and Community Health Board has offered to be involved in that program, so just for information.
Other comments or questions?
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
entertained.
can we give a great deal of credit on this mesothelioma push to Representative Rukavina?
Absolutely.
I think that needs to be said. If we're going to discuss mesothelioma, I think we need to say one person has been a driving force there, and I really appreciate his efforts.
And those dollars would not have come about without his efforts there, so absolutely.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Go forth and be productive.
Hey, there we go. We're on our way.
Yes, well, I've got another group.
Meanwhile, human beings are being strung up on bridges and little kids are getting their legs blown off.